spiritual monk. Sri Nitya ji is committed to sharing practical wisdom and teachings for happiness and awakening with a joyful and transformational way. Through his diverse offerings and interventions, Sri Nitya helps participants get in touch with themselves, leading to their personal development. जैसा कि हम लोग कहते हैं कि हम लोगों का मन बहुत चंचल है, तो इस मन को हम कैसे स्थिर और दृढ़ कर सकते हैं, आज हम नित्या जी से ये जानने जा रहे हैं. It is our good luck that Nitya ji is with us. Welcome to you, sir, again, and over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhuji. It's a joy and privilege to be here with all of you. And thank you, Sujoy, and everybody else who's helping us organize the session today. Let me just go to gallery view and see everybody.
Audio, please. Audio.
Very nice.
Audio, please.
Are you not able to hear me?
No.
You can hear me. Yeah.
I can hear you from Chennai.
Very low.
I hear you.
We can hear you clearly. We can hear you, Chennai, clearly.
Okay.
From Chennai,
I can hear you
loud.
very clearly. Loud and clear.
Very nice. Okay, good to be here with everybody. Let's start with a moment of stillness.
Okay,
I'm going to ring a beautiful bowl. It's called a Tibetan bowl. Just enjoy the sound and take a moment to settle in. We can all take a deep breath. So my name is Nitya Shanti. You can all call me Nitya. And I was introduced as a happiness guru, but I see myself more as a shuru than a guru. For those of you who don't know Hindi, shuru means a beginner. I don't claim to know everything. I just learned a few things and I'm happy to share what I do know. If you're in the shopping mall or if you're in the airport and you recognize someone, you're like, oh, I know that person. That's my neighbor, that's my friend, that's my colleague, that's my relative. There's a sense of aha, a sense of recognition. And if you go back to the time you were in school or college and you understood a concept, something just clicked. You understood a mathematical formula, you understood something in chemistry, you understood something in psychology, it just clicked. It's a similar sense of aha. And that's interesting that both of them would be like an aha, a sense of recognition. Because the true meaning of education is not to give you more, it's actually to uncover. It's to uncover what you already know. So my aim today is not so much to give you new information, although for some of you, you might find it a little bit new. The real aim is to remind you what you already know. And that's the best I can do, to remind each one of us remembering what we already know. And that's what's most reliable. There's a beautiful teaching given by all enlightened and self-realized masters. And what they say is that when you wake up from the illusion, when you wake up from the dream, it's not like it's a new, not like it's a new experience. It's like, oh my goodness, this was always here. I just didn't recognize it. It's not like you've got some whole new, fresh, new experience. So it's one of my teachers, Nisargadatta Maharaj, somebody asked him, what is it like to wake up from the dream? He says, no, you cannot wake up from the dream. To wake up from the dream would be another dream. Like you've gone from one dream to another dream. You cannot wake up from the dream. You can only wake up to the dream. Very interesting. You wake up to the dream. So it's about remembering what we already know. It's about a recognition of what was always there. And that's what I'm going to be sharing today in an experiential manner. Today's talk is about inner stability. And of course, at all times, this is a good topic, but especially in these times where everything seems so uncertain, it's an even better topic for us to explore. I lived in Sri Lanka and Thailand as a monk for many years. And in today's talk, I might share a few anecdotes from my time there. It's always nice to learn from different cultures because they do certain things that are unfamiliar to us, that are different for us. So in Sri Lanka, I found they have a practice called Pinpot, where they keep a book where they record the good things they've done in their life, the loving things they've done in their life, the caring things they've done in their life, the generous things they've done in their life. They keep a note of that, they record it. And this is different because in India, we have a saying, Neki kar darya mein dal, do something good and forget about it. And so somehow it means do something good and forget about it, do something bad, remember it for the rest of your life. And so then it leads to having low self-esteem because in the whole day, you may have done so many kind, caring, good, loving things, but the one time you lost your cool, the one time you were a little selfish, and you only highlight that and say, yeah, that proves it, I'm not good enough. That proves it. So this is a nice practice from Sri Lanka. From a young age, they are given a diary in which they're supposed to write down the good things they do every day, every week, every month, every year. And they make a note of these things. Now, what ends up happening is, imagine if you're writing this every week, every month, every year, the diary will fill up. You're given a new diary, and that will fill up. You're given a new diary. And it's not uncommon, at least for the last generation, it was not uncommon for them to have an entire shelf full of diaries of the kind, generous, loving, caring things they've done in their life. Now, when such a person falls sick, you go to that shelf, you pull out a random diary and you start reading. When you were 30 years old, you did this. When you were 40 years old, you did this. When you were 50 years old, you did this. And imagine how much joy it creates and how much inspiration it creates in the whole household. So this is a practice the Buddha gave. It's called Chaga Nusati. The word Chaga is Pali. It comes from the Pali language. Chaga means an act of generosity, an act of going beyond yourself. And Sati means to remember. Sati comes from the root word Smriti. So to remember something kind and good that you've done. So what a beautiful practice. In fact, one of my teachers, there was a lady who came to him and said, my mother's really sick. She has hypertension. She's in hospital. What should I do? So he said, go to her and talk to her. You know, we don't realize this, but one of the unskillful things we do is when we go to the hospital, we say, how are you feeling? What can be the worst question to ask in a hospital? What are the person supposed to say? They're in a hospital, right? So they're going to say, oh, I'm feeling better today. I'm feeling better today. I mean, it's not the best question. They're forced to lie, right? They're in a hospital, so chances are they're not feeling that good. So better than this is to ask the question, what have been some of the best memories from your life? And this takes their mind in a much better direction. So my teachers asked this lady, go back to your mother and ask her the top 15 or 20 moments of her life. Moments when she was very happy, very peaceful, very contented, very fulfilled. And of course, what a rich conversation. I wonder how many of us have had a conversation like this with our parents or with our friends. What have been the highlights of your life? It leads to a very rich conversation. So she made a note of this and she made a bullet point list of the top 15 things her mother considered the best moments of her life. And she hung it near the bed. Now, whenever she would have an attack of hypertension, whenever her blood pressure would really peak and the nurses are running around trying to control it, the daughter would simply start reading the list. Mom, remember when I was born? Mom, remember when you went for that hill station holiday? Mom, remember when you went for that meditation retreat? Mom, remember when, and she would start reading and immediately her blood pressure would come down. Because by now, all of us know there is a tremendous connection between our psychology and our physiology. And if your mind is in a good place, chances are your body will also be in a good place. Most of the troubles we are getting into now, the biggest virus that's eating us now is not corona, it's fear. And fear has a big role to play in our physiology as well. So in today's session, we will learn ways to step out of fear and come to the heart, come to love, and come to presence. And that will give us the stability we need to navigate whatever is coming up in our life. But what a great practice from Sri Lanka called Pin Poth. Pin means punya, which means good work. And Poth is book or pustak. So a book of good actions. And it's never too late. Many of you here are elderly, and it's a good time for you to reflect on your life. My family, in fact, my mother's on the call today. We have a family friend who has a habit of every year, he gives everyone a document of the best lessons he's learned in his life. And he edits his document every year. So it's not a static document. Every year he'll add a few points, remove a few points, reword a few points. I think this is a better legacy than the houses and cars you're leaving behind. Houses and cars will come and go. But the life lessons you've had, the most important insights you've had, what you've learned about human relationships, what you've learned about dealing with ups and downs of life, that is the real gold. That's the real gold. That's the real diamond. In fact, I used to do these Vipassana courses. They're 10-day courses where you practice silence for 9 days, meditate. And there was a story that Goenkaji, who was the main teacher of that tradition, would tell us about these two brothers. And their father died. And so they are amicably dividing all the property. And then they find a little packet. And in that packet are two rings. They're the diamond ring and they're the silver ring. So in this moment, the elder brother gets a little greedy. And he says, brother, our father has kept these two rings very safely. And I think they're not just ordinary rings. They have been passed on from our ancestors. So it's not suitable to sell them and get money and divide it. I think we should preserve these rings. And because I'm the older brother, I'll keep the diamond ring. And the younger brother, all right, go ahead. You keep the diamond ring. I'll keep the silver ring. Go ahead, no problem. So the older brother takes the diamond ring and the younger brother takes the silver ring. Now the older brother, ups and downs come in life as it comes in all of our life. The Buddha says 8 winds will blow through our life. There'll be happiness and sorrow. There'll be gain and loss. There'll be pain and there'll be pleasure. And there'll be fame and there'll be obscurity. You'll be well known and you'll be forgotten by everybody. So these 8 winds blow in everybody's life. And the older brother, when things are going well, gets very delighted, very excited. And when things are going bad, gets very depressed, almost gets suicidal. And some people are like this. They get so shaken by the winds of life. They get blown up and blown down. The younger brother thinks, I can understand why my father kept that diamond ring. It's of course very valuable. Why would he keep a silver ring? What is there in the silver ring? So he examined the ring very carefully. And on the inside of the ring is etched something. Hindi में कहते हैं, यह भी बदल जाएगा. This too shall pass. Oh, this is the teaching of my father. This too shall pass. It might be the teaching of our ancestors. This too shall pass. So he keeps in mind when the pleasant things come in life, he enjoys them, but he's fully aware this too shall pass. In fact, you will enjoy things more when you realize this too shall pass. When you're with your friends for a few hours and you know that this too shall pass, you don't waste your time looking at your phone. Because this too shall pass, it's only a few hours. So you put your phone away, you enjoy your time with your friends. So like this, knowing that this too shall pass makes you equanimous. Equanimity is the best way to go through life. It's inner stability. Your mind is not so shaken by the ups and downs. When the pleasant things come, you enjoy them, but you know it'll change, so you don't take them for granted. And when the unwanted things come, you have a stable mind. This too shall pass. And this gives you tremendous strength. When I was 16 years old, I went for a meditation course. And I was introduced to a form of meditation. I just mentioned it, Vipassana meditation. And one of the things in these Vipassana meditation courses is you meditate for about 10 hours a day. Now, I was not used to sitting for so long, 10 hours a day. For most of us, that's difficult. And there's something about meditation that, if you could watch a movie for 2 hours, you won't even notice it. But when you meditate for even 5 minutes, suddenly pain starts. Oh, back pain started. Oh, knee pain started. But you can happily watch a whole web series one after the other. Then nothing happens. But when it comes to meditation, suddenly, then I have this work to do, that work to do. How can I just sit like this? Then suddenly all these things get remembered, right? So that is because the purification has begun, right? So my teacher taught me that when the unpleasantness starts, then you should remind yourself, not only intellectually, but actually, everything is changing. So sounds are changing, breath is changing, heart is beating, sensations are happening, things are changing. In a world where everything is changing, the only thing you can rely on, the only constant, is change itself. It's fascinating. When everything is changing, when change is the rule, then change is the most reliable thing. And so you depend on change. So what I found is sitting for those long meditations, hours and hours, when I would keep my mind on the fact of change, yah bhi badal raha hai, this too is changing. Not only as a thought, but as an experience. I was able to go through it quite calmly. But when I think, oh, how long will this last? What will happen? Then I'd be in tremendous pain, tremendous suffering. So the Buddha distinguishes between pain and suffering. He says pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Suffering is the extra layer that we add on our pain. Why is it happening to me? How long will it last? What will happen next? Oh my God, oh my God. This is the extra layer that we add on it. So pain we will all have to go through. There is nobody is exempt from that. Suffering is optional. That is the extra layer that you add of your resistance, your fear, your projection into the future. So Nisargadatta Maharaj would say, nothing can trouble you in this world except your imagination. What a fantastic teaching. Nothing can trouble me but my imagination. I'll show you a few photographs. I lived as a forest monk. I'll give you a few examples from that time. Just watch this. So can you recognize the handsome monk? I became a monk at the age of 23, and I went to Thailand, and I lived in a forest monastery. These are monks who live quite simply, wake up early in the morning. When the sun rises, we walk to neighboring villages and we get our food. The villagers are waiting to serve us food in the morning. It's so beautiful. You walk through the village and people start their day by daan, start their day by giving. And nothing is said. We don't say thank you. We don't say nothing. We just quietly walk through the village. People give us food. It's understood. It's like when my left hand is scratchy, my right hand scratches it without asking for anything. It is understood. When we come back to our monastery, we share whatever food we've got from the village and everybody eats. We eat one meal a day there. So one meal in the morning, you've had your full meal of the day. And then we all have huts like this where we stay and practice. So my brother had come to visit me. So we have a few photographs from my time in the forest. We also sometimes live outdoors like this, an umbrella tent. And one thing you realize when you're living like this is, like I could be sleeping here at night and there'll be a sound in the leaves near me. It's just a sound, right? But now the minds are, is that a snake? Is that an animal? You see, it's just a sound. That's the objective fact. But now the mind starts playing tricks. Oh, it could be a bear. It could be a tiger. It could be an elephant. And your mind starts making up all these stories when most likely it's a tiny little insect. But because the insect moves through the leaves make a big sound. So it becomes very clear to distinguish between imagination and your reality. Imagination and reality. This becomes paramount when you're living as a monk. And you learn to train yourself to not believe all your own thoughts. So I lived like this for about 6 years in Thailand and Sri Lanka. And in 2008, I left my monastic life and I've been teaching in different parts of the world ever since. You heard my bowl and we started today. So one of the important lessons is this one. Between stimulus and response is a gap. And this is where wisdom lives. Between stimulus and response is a gap. And this is where wisdom lives. Stimulus is what's happening to you. And response is your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And between this is a gap. This gap is too small. You end up living like a robot, conditioned being. But if the gap expands and deepens, you start living a more conscious life. You're no longer a robot. In that gap, grace can come in. In that gap, consciousness can come in. In that gap, wisdom can come in. Wisdom lives in the gap. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today is ways to expand and deepen and widen that gap. And with that, your own wisdom will start to shine through. So A little while back, someone shared with me this picture. I got this message on WhatsApp. It might be too small, so I'll read it out. It's a message that says, a scientifically controlled study conducted by German researchers in the University of Kassel has shown that while the chest area of an average person emits about 20 photons of light per second, someone who meditates on their heart center, and sends love and light to others emits an amazing 100,000 photons per second. This is 5,000 times more than the average human being. Numerous studies have also shown that when these photons are infused with a loving and healing intention, their frequency and vibration increases to the point where they can literally change matter, heal disease, and transform negative events. One should not believe everything one gets on WhatsApp. So I went online and I checked, is there really such a study? And turns out there is such a study. And I can later on send the link of that study to all of you. It's a study about how, because actually the electromagnetic field of the heart can be measured many feet outside of the body. To study your brain waves, you have to attach something on the brain. But to study heart resonance, you can actually measure it way outside the body, because the heart is the biggest electromagnetic system, the organ in the body. So the intention that we have expands or contracts our magnetic field around us. And so I shared this picture and I shared the study, and somebody told me that they went deeper into the study and they found that the authors had written a book. And this is the name of the book. It's a book called Living from the Heart. You can note down the name if you like. I recommend this book. I've been reading this book, really enjoying it. So it's called Heart Rhythm Meditation for Energy, Clarity, Peace, and Inner Power by Pooran Baer and Susanna Baer. A spiritual classic revised and updated. So this is a great book. And we'll do a practice that is similar to what this book is talking about in today's session. I'll close the slide now. And I can make my presentation available later on. So in case you haven't noted it down, don't worry about it. All right, so the practice we're going to do now is about activating your heart essence. Give me the name of the book, please. The name of the book is Living from the Heart by Pooran and Susanna Baer, B-A-I-R. So the practice I'm about to share with you is a meditation that is found in all the native traditions around the world. It's done in one form or the other. Native traditions are those that live close to the land. Like in India, we'd call them Adivasis or tribals. In other parts of the world, they're called Aborigines. These are people who have lived close to the land for centuries. And the practice that they do, sitting around their fireplace, this is one of the practices that is found. Sociologists who study these tribals have found they all have a practice similar to what we're about to do right now. So let's learn this simple meditation. Let's all do it. It'll take us about 10, 12 minutes to do. And I want you to follow along with what I'm doing. So if you're holding something in your hand, put it down, sit comfortably, have a straight back. It'll be nice if you can close your eyes. If you're wearing glasses, you can take them out. Your feet can either be flat on the ground or crossed, whatever's comfortable for you. And for the next 10, 12 minutes, just follow along what I'm saying. All right. So bring your awareness to your body. Notice your posture. Adjust your posture if required. Sit in a dignified posture. Feel that you're sitting in a very safe and sacred place. Safe and sacred place, which allows you to go deep inside yourself. Any sounds, any disturbances will only take you deeper into yourself. So if a phone rings or a doorbell rings, it will not disturb you. Somebody else can take the doorbell, they'll take it. Even if you have to get it, you'll not be disturbed. I want you to imagine that from your spinal column, the base of your spine, a root network is emerging, and these roots are going deep down into Mother Earth. Through the soles of your feet, a root network is emerging, and from your feet, from your toes and the soles of your feet, they're going deep into Mother Earth. And over the next few breaths, you'll feel you're really connected to Mother Earth. Breath by breath, the roots are expanding and spreading their net across the rich, moist soil of Mother Earth. Breath by breath, you feel a deep connection to your original mother, Prithvi. As you breathe in fresh earth energy, which fills the whole body. As you breathe out all the tension, all the tiredness. And take a few such breaths, enjoying this earth connection. You're remembering what it feels like when you played bare feet on the earth, when you smelt the earth. And your whole being is saturated with this earth energy. You're feeling very grounded. You're feeling very rooted. You're feeling very secure. And now from the top of your head and both your shoulders, branches start to emerge and spread out towards Father Sky. Branches start to emerge and spread out towards Father Sky. Branches reaching out towards the sky, reaching out towards the heavens. And breath by breath, you feel the infinity, the expansiveness of the sky, the daytime sky and the nighttime sky. All the stars, each of those stars is a sun, showering their blessings on you, breath by breath. Connect to Father Sky. The branches spread out even more. And now as you breathe in, simultaneously breathing in from Mother Earth, concentrating on the heart. Also breathing in from Father Sky, concentrating on the heart. The energy of the earth and the sky are focused on the heart. And you're feeling like you're the favorite child of existence. The earth is your mother. The sky and a million suns are your father. And in your heart, you feel like an innocent child, a divine child, the favorite child of existence.
Some disturbance is there. Can't
It's okay.
listen.
I'll take care of the disturbance. No worry. So you're focusing on the heart. You're breathing in simultaneously from your roots and from your branches. Beautiful energy is coming to the heart. And now, if possible, see if you can feel your own heartbeat. If it's hard to feel your own heartbeat, hold your breath for 10 seconds and then see if you can feel your own heartbeat. Keep all your attention on your heart. And now forget everything in the world. Go even deeper into your heart. All that you have is the feeling in the heart. And if you can feel it, the heartbeat and the breath. The breath, the feeling in the heart, and the heartbeat. And forget everything else in the world. How precious this moment is. Connected to your mother and your father in your heart. Blessed by your mother and your father in your heart. Go even deeper into your heart. The heart is like a cave. What are you feeling behind this feeling? What is the heartbeat like? What is the breath like? And now from your heart, I want you to send strong, loving wishes to someone that you love. Could be a family member, could be a friend. For the next 2 minutes, you will send continuous loving wishes to this one person. Could be your family member, could be a friend. Think of them strongly, and from your heart, sending strong, loving wishes to their heart. Let's start. You have a feeling that your heart is beating at the same rate as their heart. And they're feeling your peace, your safety. And the power of the blessings of Mother Earth, Father Sky are converging into your heart and going to this other person's heart. And it's further expanding to surround you and your family members. You and your family members in a bubble of healing, in a bubble of protection, in a bubble of grace, pure love. Your whole home, your whole locality is in a state of high vibration, the vibration of pure love, the vibration of pure gratitude, pure connection. And as we conclude our meditation, send loving wishes to all beings in the entire universe, known and unknown, seen and unseen, human and non-human, near and far, visible and invisible, large and small. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. We'll all take 3 slow deep breaths. Second is deeper. And third is extra deep. And you can rub your palms together. Bring them over your eyes, over your face. And you emerge with a beautiful smile. And if you like, you can say, "How wonderful." Very nice, beautiful. So we did a practice called Unity Breath Meditation. In this meditation, you experienced yourself connected to Mother Earth and Father Sky, and the convergence of both of them in your heart. And then you felt like you're the most precious, sacred child in the universe. And you felt the blessings of Mother Earth and Father Sky on you. The teachers who teach this say that this is the reason that, one second. This is the reason that I'm getting somebody else's screen over here, but we can just, Prem Kumar, can you just check the screen I'm getting? Let me see if I can fix that. Stop participant sharing. Okay, good. Yeah. So what this is doing is that this is going to give you the strength to go through any vicissitude of life. See, when you're in harmony with life, you know, I was in Bali, and in Bali they have a different philosophy from many other parts of the world. It's called Trihitakarana. Trihitakarana means a triple harmony. So they say in Bali, don't pursue happiness. It's a mistake to pursue happiness. Trying to pursue happiness is like trying to pursue a butterfly. Very hard to catch a butterfly. But if you sit very calmly, it might happen. The butterfly will come and sit on your shoulder. They say you go chasing for happiness. In fact, it's very interesting. The philosophy in America is, it's in their constitution, that everyone has a right to pursue happiness. And it sounds very good. But there is an assumption built into that. When you're pursuing something, the assumption is, I don't have it. That's why I'm pursuing it. Why would you pursue something you already have? You don't pursue your own spouse. You pursue somebody else, right? You don't pursue what you already have. You only pursue what you imagine you don't have. So in pursuit of happiness, we're imagining that we don't have happiness. And in Bali, they say, don't pursue happiness. Instead, create harmony. Triple harmony. Trihitakarana. What is the triple harmony? Harmony with yourself, harmony with others, and harmony with nature. And they say every moment of your life, when you have this triple harmony, in that micro moment of harmony with yourself, harmony with others, and harmony with nature, happiness is right in the center. Happiness comes like a butterfly and sits on your shoulder. But when you're not in harmony with yourself, you're not in harmony with others, you're not in harmony with nature, you will never find true happiness. So in this practice, which is done in one form or the other, in all tribal traditions, they may have different words for it, but they all do a similar practice, where they feel their connection to Mother Earth, feel their connection to Father Sky, and they feel their connection, they feel like they are a cherished child of Mother Earth and Father Sky. In that moment, they are in harmony with themselves, with others, and with life. And in that moment, they are protected. In that moment, they are safe. So we are told this may not be the last pandemic. There may be more pandemics to come. And who knows what other upheavals are going to come, natural calamities and economic upheavals. But if you remain in your heart, if you remain connected to your heart rhythm, you will go through it unaffected, or at least not very badly affected, because you're like in a bubble. You're in a bubble of harmony. What you resist will persist. What you resist will persist. But when you're in a state of gratitude and a state of love and a state of grace, you will go through all of this without being so affected. I was in Gwalior and they were showing me a broken down, old, worn out ruin. And they said this used to be a prison during Aurangzeb's time. Really? So what happened here? So one of the, the lineage of saints in Sikhism, one of the Sikh saints, one of you would know his name, I think. He was imprisoned in that prison because he was so popular, Aurangzeb didn't like it. So he had him put in prison. But this saint, the quality of a saint is they are happy wherever they are. So when he was put in prison, after a short while, the prison became like an ashram. Everyone's doing bhajans, everyone's meditating, everyone's talking about holy things. So the prison also became like an ashram. And the wife of Aurangzeb began having these nightmares that a holy man has been wrongly imprisoned. He should be released. He should be released, or a great calamity will befall the kingdom. So she began telling her husband, Aurangzeb, please release. I'm getting these nightmares every night. Someone has been wrongly imprisoned. And he kept ignoring her. But finally, he got so fed up of it. Okay, release this man. So he sent the news, release this man. But the Guru knew that he's not the only one in prison. There are many other people are political, they have been wrongly imprisoned. He says, no, I will not be released until all these people are released with me. All these people who've been wrongly put here have to be released with me. Otherwise, I'll not be released. So Aurangzeb said, nothing doing. You stay there. You rot away. But the prison is like a very peaceful place, a harmonious place. And the wife keeps getting nightmares. And she says, please, you must release him or some great calamity will befall us. So finally, he says, all right, he will be released. And the number of people who can hold the edge of his kurta, whatever cloth he was wearing, the edge of that, how many people will hold? 3 people will hold, 4 people will hold. The number of people who can hold that, they can be released along with. So Aurangzeb said, okay, 3-4 people will go. But of course, they're very smart. So they cut his kurta into long strips. This is a story from that time, right? And so many of them held that strip, and dozens of them went out with him, and they were all released. But the beautiful thing about the story is that even in that difficult situation, his mind remained calm. You see, that would be a situation where most of us would be so agitated. I'm an innocent person. Why have I been put over here? What a terrible thing. But no, their mind remains calm. In recent times, we had the story of in what was former, okay, now it's Russia, but it was the USSR earlier, communist country. And there was no free expression of religion allowed. And at that time, the ISKCON movement was spreading around the world. So the Hare Krishnas began chanting on the streets, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. And the Russian authorities, the Soviet authorities did not like this. So they rounded all of them up. Said, where are you taking us? We're taking you to prison. Without any permit, you're chanting over here. They got very happy. Why would they get happy? Because for Krishna Bhakts, prison is where Krishna was born. If you know the story, Krishna was born, so they get very excited. Oh, hey, we're going to the Janma Bhoomi of Krishna. He's brought us to the Janma Bhoomi. He's so happy with us. So they're chanting even louder, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. And in a prison, there's not much entertainment. The little bit of entertainment is when new people come, you bother them, you bug them. So they're waiting, the prisoners are waiting, new ones will come, we'll bother them, we'll bug them. But for the first time in their life, they see happy people coming. Say, why are you so happy? They say, you don't know Krishna was born here. Krishna, who's Krishna? Wait, we'll sit down, we'll tell you. And within a few weeks, the whole prison is chanting Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. And these Soviet authorities, what are you doing? You're spoiling our whole prison. They're chanting all day and night. Get these people out of here. Get these people out of here. You're spoiling our prison system. So you see, this is an example of being in a bubble of light, a bubble of grace. For anybody else would be a calamity. For you, it's not a calamity. Your mind goes through it peacefully. So I would encourage you to read stories like this. The biggest virus, like I said earlier, is not coronavirus. The biggest virus is fear virus. And you get this virus by reading the paper every day and watching the news for hours and hours every day. Because they're not here to tell you about all the good things that are happening. Why would they tell you that? They want to, the way to control a population is to keep them in fear. Otherwise, we'll all live our lives boldly the way we do. We will live and we will die, but we'll do it boldly. We'll not do it in fear. So be very selective, just like many of you are selective about your diet, selective about the food you intake. But in the Indian tradition, food is not only what you eat. Food is also what you see. Food is also what you hear. Food is also everything that comes into your experience. This is all ahar. All the sense doors are giving you ahar. So the practice for all of you is you keep coming back. The simplification of today's meditation is, throughout the day when nothing else is happening, feel your heartbeat. Many people can't feel their heartbeat. They may start by feeling their pulse. The pulse is not the heartbeat. The pulse is the echo of your heartbeat. But try to feel your heartbeat. In the beginning, it'll be hard. Maybe you can hold your breath. You'll barely feel it a little bit, but little by little, you'll begin to feel it more clearly. So feel your heart, feel your breath. And like this, you come into a natural rhythm of life. And your natural wisdom starts to wake up within you. And natural inner strength, inner clarity, when you're not sure about what decision to make. Mahatma Gandhi was asked, how do you make these decisions that affect the whole country? We get confused making a decision for our family. And you're the father of the country, you're making decisions for the whole country. How do you do it? And he said, when I'm not sure what to do, I get quiet. If you know about Gandhiji's biography, whenever he had a big decision to make, he'd go into silence. He'd go into fast. He'd fast, he'd go into silence. What do you do when you're in silence? He said, I remain with the flow of truth within. What is the flow of truth within? The flow of truth within is your breath. The flow of truth within is your heartbeat. The flow of truth within is all the pulsation, vibration, activity that's happening right now. It's called Pratyaksh Gyan. Not borrowed knowledge, not book knowledge. This is self-evident, direct knowledge, direct wisdom. This is the most reliable thing. Everything else is, we don't know what to trust or what not to trust. One book says this, one book says that, one philosophy says one philosophy says that. Somebody asked a Zen master, what happens when you die? So Zen master said, I don't know. So you don't know? You're a Zen master, such a famous Zen master. How can you not know? He said, I'm a Zen master, but I'm not a dead one. And I love that answer. I think it's so honest. Let's talk about what we actually is in our experience. Nisargadatta Maharaj would say, the only thing that you can know for sure is I am. Everything after that is not sure. When I say I am tall, yeah, I'm tall compared to some, but I'm short compared to some. I'm honest, yeah, I'm honest compared to some, but I'm pretty, not really reliable compared to some. Anything you say after I am can be disputed. But what cannot be disputed is I am. And no scientific evidence is required for this because I am. Who is going to prove it? The only thing you can know for sure is I am. And in the Indian tradition, this is called the perspective of your soul. I am is knowing I am. And then you can say, okay, so I am. So there is the body, there is the mind, there are thoughts. All these things keep changing, but the sense of I am does not change. I meet many people who are elderly and they smile at me and they tell me, inwardly, I don't feel I'm so old. Inwardly, I feel like I'm 20. Inwardly, I feel like I'm 30. Outwardly, I may look 80, 70, whatever. Inwardly, I don't feel so old, and I can understand that. Because actually, the one who looked at the mirror at the age of 10, at the age of 40, at the age of 90, that one actually has not changed. That one just is, I am. And that I am has no age. So the reason we meditate, the reason we do any spiritual practice is to get back in touch with that pure, innocent state of I am. You can call it mindfulness. You can call it awareness. You can call it witness consciousness, Dashta Bhav. You can call it whatever you like. But this is the consciousness. And the first thing we do in our spiritual journey is to start establishing ourselves in this I am state. And for that, you can do your bhajan, you can do your spiritual study, you can do your meditation, but it should establish a sense of I am, this witness consciousness, which is called drashta bhav. This is step one in our journey. And the more heart-centric it is, the better. Otherwise, you can get very intellectually, you can feel intellectually that you're in witness consciousness, but actually it's only a mind state. You haven't really deeply established yourself, which is why I focused today's meditation on the heart. You got to really feel it, not just be lost in some spiritual idea. And then from there, the next step is Keval Darshan. Even the sense of I am experiencing this. Even that idea dissolves. It just is. Everything just is the way it is. And so this is called Samadhi. In the Indian tradition, this is called Samadhi. State of unity, a state of oneness. And this is truly where our fears disappear. You know, people who've had near-death experiences. In fact, today, how many people? We have 310 people today. In my experience, in every 100 people, random 100 people, you will find between 2 to 5 people who've had a near-death experience. What is near-death experience? They almost died. Something happened. They had an accident, or they had they drank something, or they had a brain stroke, and they almost died. And they come back with very interesting stories. And I'm sure in this 310 people, I'm sure some of you have had this experience. And for some of these people, they come back and say, wow, it was so blissful. It was amazing. I mean, it was not scary at all. In fact, I was full of light, and I could see all of you, what you were doing. I had an out of body experience. Fascinating stories. So when you study, go online and search for near death experience. It's also called NDE. And it's fascinating. Nobody comes back saying it was very scary, it was bad. They said, no, I didn't feel like coming back. I'm disappointed that I've come back. Even parents who have young children, and you would say, oh, they'd want to come back to take care of the children. No, I didn't want to come back. I was happy on the other side. So if everyone is so happy on the other side, then why are we so afraid? What is there to worry about? So Eckhart Tolle, a famous spiritual teacher, has a very nice definition of death. He says, death is what separates us from everything that we are not. Wow, what a definition. Death is what separates us from everything that we are not. And this will make sense to you when you practice, when you start practicing. And just like at nighttime when you go to sleep, you systematically now, you forget all the duties of the world, you forget your family, you forget your body also, and you go into a state of just being, pure being. So like this, when you do it consciously, sleep is unconscious meditation. Meditation is conscious sleep. The same states you're doing unconsciously in sleep, you're accessing consciously in meditation. And that's how you start waking up, and that's how you start losing your fear of all of these things. I've had a near-death experience. I almost had a bad car accident once. And in those few seconds between my car colliding with the side of the road, my driver actually had a stroke on Mumbai-Pune highway. My driver had a stroke and collapsed. And our car was about to go off the road. And that microsecond, I was able to jump and straighten the steering wheel. My mind was zen-like calm. I had no fear.
Lost you, Nitin. Yeah. Okay.
What did you hear last?
Did not hear you for some time.
What did you hear last? We'll take off from there.
It was the car accident.
Yeah. So I almost had a car accident, and I was my driver had a stroke when I was driving from Bombay to Pune. And while driving on a fast highway, he collapsed, and the car was about to get off the road. And I had to, from the back seat, I had to take off my seatbelt, jump ahead, and straighten the steering wheel before the car went off the road. And I noticed in my mind, there was no fear. There was just a response to what had happened. And I noticed how, if you practice like this, your mind responds without fear. What has to be done will be done. A friend had called me a few months back with a lot of fear because she has corona. She got coronavirus. And she said, please give me some strength. I'm feeling so afraid. What's going to happen? And I just reminded her that this corona is a novel coronavirus. It's a new virus. It's a novel coronavirus. And our body is billions of years old. This body, I have ancestors going back billions of years. My body is billions of years old. It survived countless viruses. This is one novel virus. My body has the advantage here. If you think like this, yes, you may have a temporary fever and this and that, but your body is billions of years. What's going to kill you most likely is your fear, not the virus. So you think like this. And she said, wow, that simple idea gave her such a lot of strength. And she was able to go through the experience. Within a few days, she was fine. So nothing can trouble us but our own imagination. What's going to happen? You say, bring it on. So the spiritual warrior says, bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. The spiritual warrior says, please, no more, no more. Every morning you say, oh, please, Bhagwan, aur mat dena, please, I can't take any more. If you think like this, everything, it'll be like the straw that breaks the camel's back. The smallest thing will trouble you and disturb you. But you say, bring it on, it's not a problem anymore. So you welcome everything. When you welcome everything, it's not a problem anymore. So this is the main teaching I wanted to convey. And I'd like to now invite a minute of silence, and then we can have some discussion. We can take some questions, but let's take a minute of silence first. Come back to your heart. See if you can again feel your heartbeat. And just send strong, loving wishes to everybody on the call today. You may know them, you may not know them, doesn't matter. Just send strong, loving wishes from your heart, as though all our hearts are beating at the same rhythm. Nice deep breath. Beautiful. You can slowly open your eyes. And Sujoy, can you please help me with the Q&A? Either written or spoken. And I can invite you to either type out your questions or you can raise your hand. There should be a button to raise your hand. And then Sujay might, or whoever is the host. Madhu is the host. Sujay, you're also the host.
Yeah.
You can unmute people. Or you can...
Only the person who's asking the question to unmute himself, raise your hand first. Yeah. And then your question will be taken by Nitya. And others will be mute.
Or you can type your question also, either way.
Type, if...
I can see Pramila Chibber raising her hand. Can we unmute Pramila?
Go ahead.
She's not able to unmute. Wait, let me see what I can do. Try now, Pramila. Now it should happen.
Hello? Yes. The meditation which you have taught just now, can we have for daily practice, can we have something to, any video or anything?
I've recorded this a few times. So after the call is over today, I will send Sujoy a recording and you can listen to the recording of that. Yeah, why not?
So that recording can be given to us?
Yeah, you can access the recording. It's freely available. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I have a question, Nitya.
Go ahead.
You said I am.
Yes.
Unmute karo.
That I am is ego, is ahankar. Till the I becomes in unison with the Brahma or super consciousness, this I is very dangerous. Am I right?
So the ahankar comes from comparison. See, the basic idea of ahankar is you're believing you're thinking. when I think I'm better than you, worse than you, whenever you start defining yourself, I am this, I am that, look how good I am, look how much I've done, what have you done, who are you? Or even you feel I'm not good enough, you're so far ahead of me. The moment you start attaching labels to your experience, this is where the ego comes in. Ego comes from comparison. Ego comes from believing thoughts. I am, and of course, different people may use different words, but understand what I'm trying to get at. It's not persona, it's presence. And by presence, I mean that which knows. And so it is the awareness. It is the awareness of what I'm thinking without believing all my thoughts. Aristotle defined education as the ability to have a thought and not believe it. If you're believing your thoughts, that's the world of the ego. In fact, you find these TV shows nowadays, and all the people are shouting on the TV show. They're supposed to be very highly educated people. They're supposed to be very, our leaders. And they're all shouting and screaming on the TV show because they're all believing their thoughts. Someone who believes all their thoughts is considered insane. Someone who believes very few thoughts is considered wise. And someone who does not believe a single thought is considered enlightened. So I am is a place where you're stepping back from your thoughts. The word for it is metacognition, the ability to have a thought and not believe it. So the way I'm using the word I am, it is the soul consciousness. It is not ego consciousness. Ego consciousness is I am this, I am that, you are this, you are that. That's ego consciousness. And soul consciousness is I am. And then there's one stage beyond that, which is what you talked about, Parabrahman. Beyond the sense of I am is that. So I am that. I am that which is even before the I am.
Is it like Soham?
It is like Soham, exactly. So Soham. Soham. Like the sound of your breath is the beautiful word in Sanskrit. So sound of your breath is Soham. Soham. I am. Your breath is reminding you every moment, I am. Not I am this and that, just I am. And that is beyond ego.
That is your soul. You have
that is the soul.
You are in unison with your soul.
Exactly.
Brahman.
Exactly. So as you're doing this meditation, first you become aware of your own heartbeat. Then you start becoming aware of the heartbeat of your family, your community. Then you start becoming aware of the heartbeat of the earth. Earth has its own heartbeat and the heartbeat of the universe. And like this, your beat, Trihittakarana, harmony with self, harmony with others, harmony with life. And that is where, now you don't have to go looking for happiness. You are happiness because you're in harmony with everything. So don't search for happiness, look for harmony. Where there is harmony, there is happiness.
That is when same frequency, the oscillation starts. That is what
exactly.
I want to ask.
I want to ask a question. When you're breathing in from the earth and breathing in from the sky, when do you breathe out? What time you breathe out?
You will also breathe out. Both breathing is like a pulsation. So you're breathing in and breathing out. You feel like, energy is coming from the earth first. Then later on it's coming from the sky, and later on it's coming simultaneously from earth and sky. And so it's expanding, opening and expanding.
When you're breathing in from the earth, do you also, in your mind, say you're breathing out into the earth?
Yeah, why not? You're breathing in fresh energy from the earth. You're breathing out all your troubles, all your problems to the earth. So the earth is filling you up, just like a tree. A tree is both giving and taking. It's taking from the soil, but it's also giving back to the soil. A lot of trees add nutrients to the soil as well, right? So in the same way, you're both giving and taking. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Same thing you do with the sky.
Could you please suggest how to...
Same you do with the sky.
Same with sky, exactly. Same.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
मधु जी.
Yeah.
जी मेरे को पूछना है.
बोलिए.
या मैं पूछना चाहती हूँ, मैं मीना गुप्ते हूँ कि कितने साल आपको लगे to have this mesmerizing conversation for all of us.
तो मेरी माँ बताएंगी, मेरी माँ बैठी है यहाँ पे. बात तो बहुत अच्छा करता है, घर पे कुछ नहीं करता.
Can I ask you one question, sir?
So, but basically, I think I would just answer that question to say, actually, it's not what kitne saal lagte hain. Some of you would be surprised by the wisdom of your grandchildren. ये छोटा सा लड़का, छोटी सी लड़की क्या-क्या चीजें कह रहे हैं. So wisdom is not a function of age. Wisdom is a function of how much you're in touch with this gap between stimulus and response is a gap. And there's a wonderful teaching that there are no enlightened people. There is only enlightened activity. Because what is enlightened activity? When your sense of oneness with yourself and your family and the world and with all beings, that is an enlightened activity and enlightened state. But there are no enlightened people because people is a concept. What is the person? I'm right now, my lungs are connected to the trees outside. My lungs are dependent on that. My body is dependent on the sun. There is no person. Person is an imaginary concept. So like this, there is no young and there is no old. There is just believing your thoughts, you're in samsara, not believing your thoughts. This is the world of wisdom.
Hope we will get the
So we will get copy of your presentation.
Yes.
As also the meditation,
Yeah, you'll get a copy of that. So I'll make sure that Sujoy finds a way to collect your emails.
Yes, we'll share.
Yeah.
Madhu Thakurji.
Yeah,
Madhu Thakurji.
please ask one question. How do you concentrate?
Somebody mentioned while doing meditation, you feel sleepy. What does it mean?
Yeah, so it's quite normal to feel sleepy during meditation because there are 5 hindrances to meditation. If you ever start meditating, 5 things will come to trouble you. Number 1 is sense desire, which means you start to meditate, say, nahi, par bhook lag rahi hai. I want to eat something. Or some other sense desire. I feel like, watching a movie or something that's more interesting. So sense desire is one hindrance. Second hindrance is aversion. You don't like something. Oh, I don't like the temperature. Oh, I don't like this neighbor. Oh, I don't like something about myself or even about my teacher or even about the meditation. What meditation is this? This is not the right meditation. Aversion is the second hindrance. Third hindrance is restlessness. So you're sitting, you feel like scratching. You're sitting, you feel like getting up. You can't be still. You can't be calm. It's restlessness. Fourth hindrance is doubt. I can't do this. I've never done this. I've never been good at this. How can I? So doubt is the fourth hindrance. Doubting yourself, doubting the teaching, doubting the teacher. And the last hindrance is the sleepiness. Now, the 2 kinds of sleepiness, one is, of course, you're really tired. You had a long day. You haven't slept well last night. Understandable, physiological. But the other kind of hindrance, which is more normal, is it is just your inner being resisting this. If I had to say, let's go have an ice cream, you're ready to go and have an ice cream. No tiredness is there, right? But the moment it comes to meditation, immediately tired and sluggish, then that is the hindrance we have to overcome. So sleepiness is one of 5 hindrances to meditation. We should expect it. Some ways to overcome this is you have a shower before meditating, or you take a walk before meditating, or you do some deep breathing before you're meditating, or you do some exercise before meditating. All this will help you. If it's still sleepy, meditate with open eyes. It's possible to meditate with open eyes. Stand up and meditate. And if it's still really bad, my teacher would say, take a nap and then meditate. Nothing else is working for you. But don't make it a habit to fall asleep every time you meditate.
Sir, you said Buddha was enlightened. What does it mean? You said no enlightened people.
There are no enlightened people. There's only enlightened activity because people is a concept. People is a concept. There are actually no people. People is, is there a wave? We say there's a wave, but actually there's no wave. There's just an ocean. So we seem like people. We are like little bumps. We are like the cells of the earth. We come from the earth, we return to earth. At what point are we a person? So this is an imaginary concept. But you'll understand this as you meditate, you'll understand there's only activity. This is all God's activity.
Buddha was enlightened. What does it mean?
Sir,
so when Buddha was asked, I'll come to your question. When Buddha was asked, are you a human being? Are you a divine being? Who are you? You're so special. Are you a divine being? Are you a human being? Who are you? He just said, I am Buddha. I am Tathagata. What Buddha means, I'm awake. He did not say I'm a human being. He did not say I'm a divine being. He just said, I am awake. How beautiful. So at no point did the Buddha claim to be a person. He says, I am awake. When you wake up, all the things you're dreaming about are not valid anymore.
So you said
harmony
with yourself.
Yes, Gopalji Bhai. Harmony with yourself.
Harmony with yourself, with others also.
Yes.
But then you know that's also an imagination, isn't it? Because there's so much of conflict outside, people are different, So this is also an imagination, you have.
It's all imagination. We have to use a thorn to remove a thorn. So yes, it's imagination. But when you're in an imagination, like someone who is imagining a ghost in their room, we say, yeah, there's a ghost in the room. But look at this. This is a powerful, this water has been blessed by our Guruji. Throw this water in that direction, the ghost will disappear. Oh, the ghost will disappear. Wonderful. So we use imagination to conquer imagination. You're right. It's all imagination. But what do we do now? You're imagining yourself in trouble. In fact, my talk today, I'm giving you a detailed map to enter a room that you're already in. That's what this talk is. Why should I give you a map to enter a room because you've imagined that you're not in this room. You imagine you have to go to some other room. The real journey here is the journey from here to here. It's actually not a journey at all. But we make it into a journey. So, okay, meditate, okay, do these things. But ultimately, there's nowhere to go and nothing to be done.
Excuse me, I want to just share my experience when you were telling us to meditate, which I never had before. Like when I was meditating, you were saying the earth and the sky. I could see the sky, a path and lot of trees. And then your mother and father, I could see 3 people walking up and down that path which I was seeing. Okay. So I was wondering. Then suddenly I found some animals, something like animals. But these three people kept on going up and down quite far away on that path. So I experienced that. So when you said your mother and father, so maybe they were the ones what I was seeing actually.
Why not? And you will have different experiences. Yeah, go ahead. Please finish. Please finish what you said.
Yeah, one in a white sort of clothes, you know, so that I could see in that darkness and in the path with trees on both the sides and the sky. I really experienced that. People
so
walking, you know,
that's beautiful.
2,
Lovely.
3 of them walking up and down. I assumed, like you said, they were my parents probably.
So
and
beautiful.
Thank you for having, such a nice, which I've never, I could never concentrate on any meditation. I'll be thinking of all sorts of things. But this didn't allow me to do that, but see, you know, the path and the sky
so
and the
nice.
people.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing.
Hello, sir. Sir,
yeah, Manik. Manik,
sir.
go ahead. Yeah,
सर
go ahead.
मुझे बोलना है बढ़िया था पर हिंदी में होता था मैं
हाँ तो और बढ़िया होता तो अगली बार हिंदी में करेंगे अगली बार हिंदी में करेंगे हम इंग्लिश में मिस एजुकेट हो चुके हैं तो हम लोग अंग्रेज हो चुके हैं थोड़े बहुत तो पर हिंदी में ही बोलते हैं अगली बार
अच्छी तरह से समझता
Madhu Thakur wants to ask Nitya, please answer.
Please go ahead.
मैं ये जानना चाहती हूँ सर आपसे कि आपने जो 6 साल मॉन्क के रूप में काम किया उसके बाद what made you come back?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you know, there was something in me that said I have to become a monk.
Okay.
And it made me a monk. And after about 5 years of being a monk, something in me said, अब ये बहुत हो गया, अब इससे ये पहले भी कर चुके हो. अब मैं कैसे समझाऊं इसे? जब मैं पहली बार भिक्षु बना, मुझे लगा नहीं कि पहली बार बन रहा हूँ. कि बहुत बार बन चुका भिक्षु, ये पहली बार नहीं कर रहा. जैसे कि जो चैंटिंग होती है पाली भाषा में जो चैंटिंग होती है भिक्षुओं की, most monks take months to learn it.
Okay.
I was learning it in 15-20 minutes. जो चीवर हम लोग पहनते हैं इतना आसान नहीं है 2-3 दिन लगते हैं सीखने के लिए मैंने 15 मिनट में सीख लिया चीवर पहनना मुझे लगा कि मैं पहली बार सही कपड़े पहन रहा हूँ जीवन में तो मुझे लगा कि मैं पहली बार भिक्षु नहीं बन रहा हूँ बहुत बार बन चुका हूँ भिक्षु और लगा कि ये तरह मेरा कंफर्ट जोन हो गया है भिक्षु बनना कंफर्ट जोन हो गया है और इस जीवन में it's not just about my own practice you see we breathe in and we breathe out we take care of ourselves we take care of others. So I felt that I have done enough for myself in many lifetimes. This lifetime is more about also making myself available. And just being in a forest doing my own practice, that's a comfort zone for me. So I was guided. And so everybody, we should follow our inner guidance. It's not about what is right and what is wrong, what this teacher says or that teacher says. The Buddha himself, the first 2 teachers he met, they liked him so much, they said, please stay with us and teach with us. And he said, no, this is not my final destination.
So that means the intuition you get from your, that is to be followed.
Follow your intuition. Okay. My teacher used to say, there comes a point in your practice where the heart tells itself what to do.
Right.
जो आपने आज ध्यान सीखा है, heart के rhythm पे focus करने का, सांस को जानने का, feeling your connection to earth and sky. अगर आप ये बार-बार करेंगी practice, आपका अंदर का intuition जागेगा. Okay. आपको मालूम होगा हर स्थिति में हमें क्या करना है. Between stimulus and response is a gap. जो हो रहा है और जो हम सोच रहे हैं उसके बारे में कर रहे हैं उसके बीच में gap है. उस gap को आप access करेंगे. और उस गैप से अपने आप ये नहीं होगा कि मधु जी बोल रही हैं जीवन आपके भीतर का जो जीवन है वो बोलेगा आपके अंदर जो आत्मा है बोलेगी परमात्मा है बोलेगी और लोग बोलेंगे अरे आपने क्या कह दिया बिल्कुल सही चीज बोली आपने सही समय पर सही चीज बोली क्योंकि आप नहीं बोल रहे जीवन बोल रहे so we have to come to a point where life is moving through us it is already doing that but we imagine I am doing things ऐसे कृष्ण भगवान कहते हैं कि कर्म कर फल की इच्छा मत कर. So we do our best and we leave the rest. That is how you're living a life of dharma. Otherwise, you're living a life of karma. अगर आपको लग रहा है कि मैं बोल रही हूँ, मैं कर रही हूँ, मैं अच्छा कर रही हूँ, बुरा कर रही हूँ, then this is karma. आपको लग रहा है हो रहा है, घटना घट रही है. लोग बोलते हैं नित्या बड़ी अच्छी टॉक दी, तो मुझे तो याद ही नहीं मैंने क्या टॉक दी, मुझसे आगे निकला ही टॉक. अब अच्छी है, बुरी है, पता नहीं कैसी है. So a tree is just a tree, a bird is just a bird. Madhu can just be Madhu. Let life do what it has to do. And don't be so caught up in good and bad, this and that. And this is the way to live a simple life in harmony with yourself, in harmony with others, in harmony with existence. Trihita karna.
Trihita karna.
Sir, I want to ask one question.
Rajapan ji.
Can I have 1 minute? What is the best time to do meditation in a day?
The best time, I asked my teacher this and I said, what is the best time? And my teacher smiled and said, right now. so the time, you know, this time thing, if you wake up early, then very good, do it early. But don't feel that, oh, I wake up late, I can't meditate. ब्रह्म मुहूर्त तो मिस हो गया, अब अगले दिन ब्रह्म मुहूर्त में करेंगे। अरे जब भी आपको समय है आप करिए। Ultimately, meditation is a state of experiencing your life wholeheartedly, without any barriers. Any moment of complete experience is a moment of meditation. जो भी कर रहे हैं, अगर आप बोल रहे हैं तो पूरे दिल से बोलिए, सुन रहे हैं तो पूरे दिल से सुनिए, चल रहे हैं तो पूरे दिल से चलिए, एक्सरसाइज कर रहे हैं तो एक्सरसाइज करिए, खाना बनाने तो खाना बनाइए, जो भी आप पूरे दिल से करेंगे, it's like a meditative activity. So it's not so much the act, it's the consciousness you're in. So when you come to drashta bhav, and as you question who is having this drashta bhav, that is the process of meditation, that is the process of waking up. तो हर समय जो भी समय आप कर सकते हैं वो ध्यान का समय है. Every moment. Ultimately, our aim is your whole life should become your meditation, not just an activity कि आंखें बंद करके बैठ गए. जो भी कर रहे हैं, जो भी है, जैसे कि क्रिया योगा में लहरी महाशय थे. लहरी महाशय was famous for being a householder saint. He had a family, he had everything, but he was always in a state of samadhi. So this is available to all of us. जो भी हम लोग हैं, जो भी कर रहे हैं, we can be more and more in a state of samadhi. शुरुआत में खनिक समाधि मतलब कुछ सेकंड के लिए होती है, उसके बाद उपचार समाधि कुछ मिनटों के लिए होती है, और आगे चल के अर्पणा समाधि, पूरा जीवन आपका समाधि जैसे जीवन हो गया है. This is the purpose, this is the aim.
Yeah, this is Madan. What I request you, can you send it to Dignity also, Dignity group, this meditation? And I am also thankful to you for sharing it with us, all of us. It's a beautiful experience you shared with us. And I want you to send it to Dignity so that we can...
I'm sure Sujoy will do that. Yeah, Sujoy will share this lecture and the presentation.
Yes, we'll share. Yeah,
we will do.
Can you please suggest some good books to read?
I recommended one book today, and I don't want to recommend too many books. Today's book is very good. It's called Living from the Heart, and I think we'll give you the link to that book. Should I show you that presentation again? Did you miss that?
So anyway, the food interferes.
So much.
This is the book I recommended. Okay. Living from the Heart by Pooran Baer and Susanna Baer.
Okay.
Sir, food. Sir, I am Sivakumar from Bangalore.
Yes.
Food definitely interferes. Food is this thing, factor that interferes with the practice of
Give me 1 minute, Rajappan.
Heaviness of food and all, your mind will tend to distract or sleepy and all.
Yes.
The alertness will not be there, certainly.
So I would say be an experimenter. We should not just believe what people say. We should experiment. So in my life, I've experimented with many diets. I've experimented with a non-vegetarian diet, with a vegetarian diet. I've been on raw foods for some time. I've lived on liquid diets, on fruit diets. Currently, I'm a vegan, so I don't take any animal products whatsoever. And so we all should experiment and not just believe what anybody says. In your own life, I'm sure, Shiv Kumarji, you've tried many different kinds of food. So you decide how much quantity of food, what timing of food, what kind of food is more suitable to you.
I'm just telling heaviness.
Give me 1 minute, Mr. Rajappan.
I'll just come to you. So basically experiment, and the basic thing we found is the food that's closer to nature, that's not very old food, that's kept in the fridge for too long, freshly prepared food with not too many very strong, heavy tastes and oils and things. That food tends to be better for meditators, right? So you experiment with that and you see what works for you. Rajappanji, go ahead. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. I used to do meditation. During the meditation, I think about others, the welfare of my friends, relatives, workers, all of them they are bringing in my mind.
Beautiful.
Almost 100 to 175 to 200 people I am telling every day.
So beautiful.
I pray for their welfare.
Yes.
That gives me a lot of strength and peace of mind. I'm not going to doctor for past 57 years.
Oh my goodness. What a great example you are. So you are practically demonstrating what I've talked about today. That you did not have to go to the doctor for 57 years.
I'm so happy to learn from you again. It's almost a revision for me.
Nice. Exactly. So nice. We began by saying that today I will be teaching you what you already know, and you have ended the talk today with that same talk.
Of you.
So nice. Thank you for sharing.
Me also, sir, in your prayers. This is a small girl from small town.
Yes, why not? I'm sure everybody. This is what, we are the ones we've been waiting for. The Native Americans say, no, you're not waiting for me or anybody else. You've been waiting for yourself. You've been waiting for yourself to bless yourself. You've been waiting for yourself to embrace yourself. One of my teachers says, What a beautiful teaching. She says that what you really desire, deep down, what you really desire is what you already have. What a great teaching. We don't even know what we keep desiring, something else, but what you really desire is what you already have. The day you start desiring what you already have, you have learned the meaning of the word surrender. Because what God has given you, you have also decided to love it. As long as you keep fighting it, resisting it, no, I want something else, you are in opposition to life. You love where you are, you love what you are, and the next layer keeps opening up, like a lotus. The next layer is inside this layer. The next layer is inside this layer. The next layer is not somewhere out there. The next layer is right here. So love this moment, and the next moment is more beautiful than this moment.
So taking coffee.
बहुत अच्छा बोलते हैं आप, बहुत ही अच्छा बोलते हैं. Very nice.
Thank you, Ji.
All the questions are taken.
Yes, I think.
One more.
Madhuji, go ahead.
So beautiful, sir. There is one question.
Srinivas.
Yeah. Nitya, what is the difference between satisfaction and contentment?
Good question. Between satisfaction and contentment, I use the words I use the word contentment, satisfaction, fulfillment like synonyms. So there may be a difference, but for me, they are very, very similar. Maybe you could say, like we say, the difference between pleasure and contentment and joy. Pleasure is happiness of the body. Contentment is happiness of the world. And joy is happiness of the spirit. So maybe there's something like that with satisfaction, contentment, and fulfillment as well. Maybe it has to do with, I've done all my duties, so I'm satisfied. I have all that I need, so I'm contented. And I'm doing the best I can with my abilities that life has given me, and I'm fulfilled. Maybe it's something like that. But for me, they're very similar words.
But to me, all these are the thought processes.
Thank you, Nitya. We can never have enough of you.
Yeah, that's true.
Really, my God, the more I hear, the more I want to hear.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Nitya, let's listen to your Mera Mangal.
We'll end with Mera Mangal. This is a good suggestion. We will end with a little prayer called Mera Mangal, Tera Mangal. But Madhuji, would you like to complete before we end with that prayer?
No, I just said God bless you.
God bless you.
So
God bless
you. A vote of thanks. Yeah.
Vote of thanks, Kazije.
I like
should I
so
do the Mangal Maitri first, or should we do vote of thanks first?
Yeah. No. First the meditation.
First the Maitri. Okay. So please, everyone, listen to this beautiful song. And I'm going to mute everybody, but you can chant along with me wherever you are. It'll just be lovely to chant along. I'm just going to mute you temporarily.
Great.
And this is a beautiful song called Mangal Maitri. It comes from Goenka ji. It's a way of wishing happiness for everybody. Mera Mangal, Mera Mangal. You can chant with me. Mera Mangal, Mera Mangal. Mera Mangal hoye re. Mera Mangal hoye re. Tera Mangal, Tera Mangal. Tera Mangal, Tera Mangal. Tera Mangal hoye re. Tera Mangal hoye re. Sabhi ka Mangal, Sabhi ka Mangal. Sabhi ka Mangal, Sabhi ka Mangal. Sabhi ka Mangal hoye re. Sabhi ka Mangal hoye re. Jana Jana Mangal, Jana Jana Mangal. Jana Jana Mangal, Jana Jana Mangal. Jana Jana Sukhiya hoye re. Jana Jana Sukhiya hoye re. दसों दिशाओं के सब प्राणी. दसों दिशाओं के सब प्राणी मंगल लाभी हों रे. मंगल लाभी हों रे. निर्भय हों निर्बैर बने सब, निर्भय हों निर्बैर बने सब, सभी निरामय हों रे, सभी निरामय हों रे। तेरा मंगल तेरा मंगल, तेरा मंगल तेरा मंगल, मेरा मंगल मेरा मंगल, मेरा मंगल मेरा मंगल, सभी का मंगल सभी का मंगल, सभी का मंगल सभी का मंगल, सभी का मंगल हो रे, सभी का मंगल हो रे। समस्त लोका सुखिनो भवन्तु, समस्त लोका सुखिनो भवन्तु, समस्त लोका सुखिनो भवन्तु. And we'll chant together. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Beautiful. Thank you so much, everybody. Sujoy, over to you.
Yeah, Sujay, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Nitya ji. What a wonderful session. I think we all of us really enjoyed it. So, on behalf of entire Dignity Foundation, our members, my entire team, a very humble thank you to you for coming to our Chai Masti Center and gave such a precious time of yours. We really enjoyed it, and definitely we'll share the today's video with all of you. But one more thing I would like to thank Nitya ji is for, recently we have launched a fundraiser on Give India for a ration support to needy elderly. And with just one request from our founder president, Shilu Srinivasan, Nitya ji immediately agreed to spread the word in his peer network. We have created link for Nitya ji, and Nitya ji also raised donations. So thank you, Nitya ji, for that. And I'm very happy to tell you, as on today, we have raised 20 lakhs on Give India fundraiser.
So beautiful. Yeah. So happy to hear that. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So good.
And I would also like to thank Madhu Gaurji, who is our Magarpatta Center coordinator, for arranging this beautiful session. Our chapter head, Kiran Mahankale, Pune chapter head, and all our Chai Masti members who has participated today. So once again, thank you very much. Thank and you. I think we'll require once more, one more time. We'll
Why not? With a name like Chai Masti, I have to come back again and
every
again. Chai
time
Masti.
When Nitya comes, we say once more.
So nice.
Thank you so much.
Lots of love and lot of good wishes to all of you. Namaste.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.